Well, good evening. I will call the special meeting of the Federal Way City Council to order. We've got a study session. First, we're going to hear from King County regarding their long-range plan, King County Metro, and then we're going to hear from Sound Transit. So let's hear from our representatives. I believe it's Harold Taniguchi, Director of King County Department of Transportation. Evening, Harold.
Good evening. Am I the worker of the clicker?
The
Just use
That's a new way to say
The worker of the clicker.
That's a new term, isn't it?
You know, that I may have to trademark that phrase, Harold.
That's right.
Okay, well that phrase was in my notes, so I was diligent.
Very good.
I apologize for not being super prepared for this. My name is Harold Taniguchi. I'm the Director of King County's Department of Transportation. In addition to the transit system here, our Metro Transit, we operate a road services division, Boeing Field. We have a fleet group and a marine division that deals with commuter service from West Seattle and Vashon. So I'm here just simply to start this presentation. I was going to say tick you off. That didn't come out right.
Give us a minute.
Yeah. This is going well. So Metro Connects is a vision for Metro's future that provides more choices, more service, and one system. It envisions an integrated transport system that connects people to opportunity, protects our environment, knits together our growing cities, builds on our strong foundation including rapid ride lines, green bus fleet, Orca card system, and Orca Lift. The plan is shaped by input from passengers, cities, Sound Transit, transportation agencies, businesses, and stakeholders, and it creates a shared vision for better mobility throughout our region. The principles that this plan was built on include collaboration with our riders, agencies, cities, and employers. We design services to connect people to link. We want to serve more types of trips going beyond the typical work and school. We want to meet today's needs and future growth and allow flexibility by improving accessibility, meeting local needs, and employing new technology. I don't need to tell you, because I'm sure you're very well versed, this is a very, very popular region. You know, we're anticipated to grow tremendously in the next 25 years. And in order for that to happen, we want to make sure that transit grows with it in order for this whole thing to work. Limited roadway capacity is something that we simply can't build our way out of. We want to make sure, as I stated before, that transit riders have the most access possible, make it easier and more integrated, seamless, more flexible, all the while helping our environment by reducing emissions and stuff like that. So as the chart shows here, the slide shows that we'll need to grow 70% of this service in order to respond. But in addition to that, growth, this is in addition to the existing planned and proposed Sound Transit service. I know Sound Transit folks will be talking after us. So if the ST3 is implemented, more service is necessary by Metro to provide those critical access to the link that's built out. So we're looking forward to questions you may have. We're here really to give you the outline of what the long-range plan is all about, but mainly to set the stage and getting a lot of continual input from everybody that wants to have a say. Turn it over to Graydon Newman, who's really the key presenter, and walk through the plan.
Well, first, thanks for setting aside some time to devote to some important transit issues and long-range planning. I'm glad that we could be here alongside Sound Transit. And this is really the culmination of a planning effort that started 18 months ago. So this is building on a lot of work that we've done with city staff, a lot of work we've done with elected officials and stakeholder groups, the public, and through countless meetings, we're really proud of this effort. And I will be diving into the details a bit more. And we'll be talking in the plan about a service network in 2025 and 2040. We'll also be going over what we need to do to make sure our service is run efficiently to deliver that network. And we'll also talk about how we're providing our customers with more choices to make transit work better for them. as well as making sure that in 2040 and 2025, as existing plan to propose sound transit services and our services grow, that they'll grow together and support each other and also support the development goals of local jurisdictions. And we'll also talk about what we need to do that. So there's some really eye-catching outcomes out of this plan. One is that we are doubling transit ridership in 2040, which is a really big boost. We'll also, one of the major outcomes of this plan and the service network is that more people are located near frequent service. Right now, roughly 20% of people in King County are close to frequent service. And by frequent service, I mean service that runs 5 to 15 minutes or better all day. And in 2040, that number jumps to 70%. And this is important because not only is it important just to get more people into the system and in proximity to frequent service itself is really a kind of a game changer for local areas because you don't have to necessarily look at it at a timetable to see when your next bus is coming. This plan and this network also takes cars off the road on our congested roadways, bringing in the most congested times. And I drove down here today, so I realize the congestion problems you guys are dealing with on I-5 South in particular, and increases the mode share for transit in those peak period commute times from 14 to 24%. So 1 in 4 people will be using transit in King County to get to where they need to go in peak periods. And you know, that 1 in 4 it is actually a really large number. So that's the equivalent of 16 freeway lanes in 2040, and also the equivalent of you need 2,000 acres of parking in 2040 to do the same things that this network is doing without that shift. And when we talk about the service network, we're talking about 3 main service types. One is frequent service, and that, as I mentioned, is 5 to 15 minutes or better all day. This is what we call our show up and go network because you don't necessarily need a timetable. And this service type includes 20 new rapid ride lines, 300 miles of new and upgraded rapid ride service, so making that service run better than it does today, as well as creating 20 more lines of new service, including 2 new lines in Federal Way. And there's an express service type we also plan for that's similar to current ST Express service. So that is an all-day service, limited stop, that arrives 15 to 30 minutes or better all day, and connects centers where people live and work, so big concentrations. There's the Puget Sound Regional Council designation of regional growth centers, but these are really centers of activity that are just dense concentrations that we want to make sure people can get to fast, and to in between. And then local service, and local is really a reflection of King County. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of transit area, and so that is reflected in our local service. So that includes fixed route bus service that may arrive 30 minutes or better. And it also includes products that we've been piloting in our alternative services program. So that includes shuttles, also a lot of work with technology to work with transportation network companies like Uber or Lyft. And these local services perform a lot of different functions. They allow local circulation, so you can get to and between local destinations. They also connect you to the regional transit network and provide first and last mile connections from these frequent and express routes. They provide those connections out to where actually people are starting their trips. So we'll take a look at the frequent network here, and like I mentioned, this includes the rapid ride network, and the map that you can see here, they are the deeper red lines are rapid ride lines, and the other red lines are frequent lines. So these differ a bit, and if you have any questions about that, feel free to ask. But the frequent services also show up 5 to 15 minutes or better all day. So you can see the 3 rapid ride in Federal Way. We have the A line, the existing A line, but that would change a bit on its northern end to provide another connection to Link light rail service from Rainier Beach. We also have a rapid ride line that's proposed from Auburn to Twin Lakes, between Twin Lakes and Auburn via the Federal Way Transit Center. And we have another rapid ride line going from Twin Lakes to Kent, as well as a frequent line running east-west a little bit south on North Shore. So we can take a look at also the express network. You can see the express lines that we designate as Metro Express, and those are in green. And we have Sound Transit provided express service that is of existing, planned, and proposed in the light blue. And you can see that that Sound Transit express service is still shown to be providing service to Federal Way. There's also several more connections in southeast King County, connecting from Auburn that'll allow some connections from Federal Way into other areas like Maple Valley, Covington, and Enumclaw. And this is the local service network map. And this one's a little different because we show these, the white lines are where we've considered, okay, fixed route transit, like traditional bus service. We can see that operating here, so that we have planned lines on a map for that. But we understand that one size doesn't fit all, and that we would work with communities as we develop these networks to make sure that we're meeting the transportation needs, whether that's a traditional fixed route bus or not. And the shaded portions are where we expect to serve areas with this alternative flexible transit. You know, we would look at things like the transportation network companies like Lyft and Uber, and partnering with them to enable folks to ride between the lines, we call it. So going from these dense transit corridors to locations where they need to go. And we expect approximately 20% of the 2040 operating budget to go to support local service. Some current examples, there's a community shuttle in Burien that was a pilot project with the Alternative Services Project. There's also some ride-sharing technology pilot project running in several places in the county, but including Redmond and Mercer Island. And when we bring this all together, it's really focused on providing a comprehensive integrated network of bus services that are also well integrated with existing planned and proposed Sound Transit express service, Sound Transit Link Light Rail, and other high-capacity transit. So one really compelling way we can show really what this plan is about is through maps like these, and I'll explain it in a second. But really what we're trying to do with this plan is increase the public's mobility, connecting them to opportunities throughout King County. And with this plan, the public's mobility will increase. These maps are showing basically from these 3 points. We have Highline College in the south, downtown Ballard in the northwest, and Overlake Transit Center in the northeast, how far you can get in an hour. So the more yellow and orange parts are within 15 and 30 minutes. And you can see a real striking difference in people's mobility around the county. So if you look in 2040, you'll be able to get from Auburn to Snoqualmie in under an hour. It takes about 2 hours now. In 2040, you'll be able to get from Green River College to Federal Way or Des Moines in less than an hour at any time of day. And students living in Kent, Federal Way, Burien, Auburn can access Highline College in less than an hour. And while you see some are able to do that now in Federal Way, you look further in 2040, and that scope of people that have access to educational opportunities and jobs and shopping destinations and really anything they want to do vastly expands in 2040 with this planned network. So some of the things that we'll need to do to help our buses run faster, run more reliably, and run on schedule. We'll need infrastructure investments like bus lanes, signal priority that gives preference to buses as they go through intersections. Same thing with off-board ORCA readers, so things that make getting on and off the bus faster, that allow us to invest our money more wisely and provide more service on the street. Because when things run faster, that frees up funds for new investment because we're operating the same service more efficiently. We focused higher levels of investment where there's frequent service and where roads are more congested. So when we look at If you take a look at the draft plan, you'll see some of the capital assumptions will be coming out, and some of the items that we're really focused on. We looked at where they're most needed. And this would be a significant expansion to Metro's capital program and would require strong partnerships from cities. And we're looking to support your development goals with this transit investment. And that includes transit-oriented development. So, we heard from a lot of cities about we want to concentrate growth in some of our downtown areas and some core areas that we want served by transit. And we'll be looking on potentially focusing more on transit-oriented development at the county, but we really want to support the local goals that you have and making sure that transit can help be a catalyst to increasing development where you want it to locate. And this has been also a major interest point of the King County Executive, and particularly in focusing on affordable housing in this area. And from looking at it at a customer perspective, we also want to provide more choices so that transit is more relevant to more people, and provides the service that they would like to use most. Services where, like alternative services, that traditional transit service doesn't necessarily work in every area that well. So finding how we can provide services that do work well and are more flexible to when people want to travel and where they want to go. We'll be looking again to talk about some innovations of technology. There's a lot on the horizon that we don't necessarily know about. We know things that are coming, but when we're talking about 2040, we want to remain nimble and flexible enough to look at technologies like driverless vehicles and really using technology to break down barriers that people have now to using transit. So that means better information, real-time information, and developing new products. So we want to be more on the forefront of incorporating and implementing technology that helps solve the problems that we've always had. And we'd also like it to be easier. We've planned for this to be easier, to make it easier to move between Metro and other modes. And by other modes, we don't just mean light rail, although we certainly do focus on that quite a bit. We also mean other transportation providers wherever they are. So that's including a Lyft or an Uber type company, but also bike share, getting around using other modes, like non-motorized modes, and really making transit work for everyone. And a major focus of this plan was this theme that we had: one system, easy to use. So there's a lot of planning going around. Everybody is really looking forward to the future, and you hear more about that from our Sound Transit partners. But we want to make sure that this is one system to the public, that really from a customer, they don't really care who is providing their service. They want it to work, and they want it to be easy to move between the two. So there was a big focus of the plan to deliver that kind of experience. And we want to provide, to do that, we want to provide better information. That includes real-time information, not just on your phone, but could be at park and rides. It could be a lot of places that's more dynamic than what people are currently used to. Improving access for people who want to walk or bike there. Also making our facilities well-designed, safe, clean, and comfortable. Those are basics for public infrastructure and public services, and we're going to make sure that we're delivering that. And the point of accessibility, I think people tend to think of that in a term that is, if someone has a mobility impairment, if someone has some kind of disability. But really, when we talk about accessibility for everybody, accessibility for families, for people that are older or younger. Really making the service faster for those folks, because if something's accessible, it's faster and more efficient. And something we heard from a lot of cities, and that we know is an issue of great interest, is providing access to our transit system through park and rides. We in this plan and through proposed Sound Transit investments, this would be an increase of over 40% of permanent park and ride stalls in 2040. Our planning investments were focused on a corridor level, so we're not pinning down exactly where park and ride might be in 2040, but we're looking where the need is, so we can we can outline a vision of that. And we looked at where that investment should be focused. And that's area where the park and ride access is most critical to providing access to the system. So maybe they don't live near dense transit service. They don't live in a dense area that's already served by transit. And we'd be looking at providing more opportunities through lease lots, through shared parking, through on-street options, really trying to figure out that, you know, there's not necessarily one solution for this, but we want to make sure that we're meeting the needs and increasing the efficiency too. That could be through ride share, so making that easier and more accessible to folks. Restriping lots is a simple thing we've done that increases capacity on the same facility. And like I said, real-time information I think is critical for some folks, because some, you know, we've heard from your city and others that, you know, that sometimes the most desirable park and ride is full, and communicating the other options that people have is pretty critical in that decision. And also using paid parking to manage the capacity that we have better. And when we look at this larger service network, a lot more service hours, we're growing the amount of transit boardings. And this map illustrates this. It's maybe a little tough to read. It's kind of some small pies up there. But if you can see that, there's it's the increase in transit boardings, and it's over today, and then we have the light portion, which is transfers. So if you look in Federal Way, you'll see there's a big increase, and a lot of that is transfers, and a lot of that is due to proposed Link Light Rail service there. And that means that we are going to need more facilities to accommodate this transit service and this amount of transfers. You know, currently we have 4 stations that have 10,000 or more boardings a day. In 2040, that number goes to 30. So it's a dramatic difference, and we need to be and are planning for that, and also ensuring that, you know, again, that happens in an efficient way that's accessible to everyone. So in the plan, we'll outline things that we need to succeed, and that includes investing and planning together. We look forward to continuing to working closely with city staff, with elected officials, and with the public on how we're going to match the network to the development. So this isn't a set in stone document. This is something that we're going to look to update, and that we'll be developing 6-year implementation programs where we'll look to work intensely with cities to, you know, if something that you see in 2040 should happen today, and there's, you know, and it makes sense, and we look at it, and that I think those are the kind of conversations that we need to have. So we'll look forward to doing that. And some of the things that we've heard already, and that we want to make sure that you understand that we're hearing some of the issues that the city is facing, and how we've addressed them in the plan. We heard that east-west connectivity between South County cities is a big issue, including connections to high-capacity transit, including the proposed link extension, and supporting denser developments with transit. So 2 locations include Twin Lakes and the city center, and talking about catalyzing that sort of transit-oriented development to the extent that we can. And more and frequent service to park and rides, we definitely heard. And then providing that local transit connection. So that could be a local transit connection, just getting into the city center, getting to the transit center, or getting to regional destinations. That is something that we included in the plan, and we'll look to continue that conversation. You know, I've definitely heard that there's interest in alternative services for some of these solutions, and we look forward to continuing that. But I'll pull out 2 examples about how we incorporated those kind of issues that you're facing in our plan. And that's the east-west connectivity and connections to high-capacity transit. And if we look here, this map shows in the red lines, that is current frequent service, and you'll see the proposed and soon to be existing Link Light Rail stations in the blue circles. And this is today. And in 2040, you can see the dramatic increase in frequent service. You'll notice that in the south and then further north. There's a dramatic increase in east-west connectivity with frequent service or providing meaningful connections between South County cities. And you'll also see that there's great connections to Federal Way Transit Center, to Star Lake Park and Ride, and continuing north. So again, we really look forward to continuing this conversation. This is the start of our big push to get folks more engaged and really get comments back from cities and from the public and from other stakeholders. So we do also have, it's not listed here, we have a survey that would be great for residents to fill out and have their voice heard. And we'll also have an open house on April 28th here at Todd Beamer High School. And I encourage everyone to visit the website KC Metro Vision. We have an online map that's easy to navigate, the draft plan, really anything you'd like to read about on there. So with that, that's really all I have as far as presentation.
All right, Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. Thank you for coming here tonight to talk to us. Is there any way that there could be a shuttle between the park and ride, your park and ride, and the transit center here in Federal Way?
Are you talking about the park and ride located just south
of the mall?
South of the mall. That's something that we're looking at. I know that we've heard that service to park and rides is something that I know is valued. There's a thought that some aren't well used because people see more attractive transit options at others. So in last March we added some service, just to demonstrate sort of we hear you, as we've added some service to the Twin Lakes and Redondo Heights Park and Rides. But we'd definitely be interested in sort of hearing more about those specific connections.
The reason I'm asking is I recently needed to find parking to take a bus to Seattle at 10 o'clock in the morning, and there was no parking at the transit center. So I went to the Metro lot where I found lots of parking available in the pouring rain and realized that there weren't any buses running to Seattle at that time, and I had to walk to the transit station. And a bus stopped, didn't let me on, and the bus went to the transit station. And I wasn't the only one who was walking between the park and ride and so if we could have a shuttle, there would be more use of that lot. And in fact, when I got in line for the bus, there were several people who said that they sometimes will just drive to Seattle because they're not going to be walking between the two. It's just not convenient for them, and they'd rather drive if they can't find parking.
Yeah, we thank you, Councilmember Hunter. We've been talking about this literally for years, and I talked to somebody actually at the town hall meeting we had last week on this very issue. So I think we're losing riders. We're having people, we're having people drive to Seattle. We're having people just kind of throw their hands in the air because you've got the parking capacity on 324th, but yet you've got the longer service over at the Sound Transit Parking Garage. So it seems to me that we need to coordinate that service.
Thank you. That's something we definitely want to improve those connections.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Burbidge and then Councilmember Moore.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I appreciate your presentation, and I'm very pleased to see this planning going on. I am looking at the long time range, however, and I'm curious I'm hoping that we'll have a little bit more specifics as to when some of this will begin to happen. But more specifically, I certainly would support a shuttle from those two areas. Councilmember Honda mentioned wanting to use the transit at, I believe, 10 in the morning, and I believe our parking garage is full something like 6:15 or 6:30 in the morning.
Early, yes.
Yeah, so it's definitely a need to, and when we have that other area available, it would make sense to figure out a solution for that in some fashion. But I also would like to suggest that while I'm very pleased to see the additional rapid ride lines in Federal Way, that's very needed. We have a couple of facilities to the west of the westernmost planned line, and those are Dumas Bay Center, which is a very significant conference center and also houses Knudsen Family Theater. And then we have Dash Point State Park to the south. Both of those two major facilities are heavily used, and we could certainly provide you with the details on the use of those for your greater understanding of the importance of having some transit service to those.
Sure, that would be great. Yeah, I think when we look at connections to some of those areas, if you look on the map, you're completely correct that we see local service getting near-ish, but not connecting there, not making that connection. And I think that might be a great case for alternative services that provides a meaningful connection to Dumas Bay, and some of those areas where sometimes it's hard to serve that whole area with fixed route. But yeah, it's something that we'd certainly take a look at.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Moore.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the information. It's extremely informative. I appreciated seeing the web link located at the bottom of each PowerPoint slide. It makes me want to study it and look at it even more. Just more of comments and kind of statements. Maybe not, well, and then I'll end with a question.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously with the last major cut concern that King County Metro faced, I know that myself and others on the City Council, we obviously heard a lot of concerns. And particularly I heard a lot of concern from the disability community. So I just want to make sure that you guys are bringing their thoughts into your arena. I guess maybe a question is, have you guys ever met with the disability community and just kind of listened and heard from them? Maybe would be my first question.
We actually have an ongoing body. I can't recall the name. I know it meets at least monthly. That are representatives from all across the county that are facing varying mobility challenges, that they can represent those kind of concerns directly to Metro and to other people in the organization. It's been a real focus in this plan and just other work that we do routinely. I know just this past year we seeked grant funds to help get an ongoing really focus group to help inform our purchasing of our fleet, which is one of the, it doesn't sound very sexy, but if you talk to someone who has mobility challenges, that how that bus is designed means a lot to them. And so getting a focused look at that was an important concern there. But we do definitely, that's one of our focuses in the long range plan was what they call inclusion planning. And that is planning to include everybody in all your facilities, not trying to retrofit something, which is ultimately generally more expensive anyway, but also doesn't serve your whole rider base, including people with disabilities, but also people who are just trying to use it. So it's definitely on the forefront of our mind, and we do have continuing conversation. Yeah,
and if I could just add, certainly there's a lot of great clubs. The Kiwanians, I can't think of the name, the Rotary, thank you. They have a club where people with disabilities are highly involved with. And so I know that sometimes in the South End we kind of get forgotten sometimes, and I know there's a lot of good voices within this area, Federal Way, that could be involved.
Well, we'd love to follow up with you to,
yeah.
Sorry.
I'll look forward to that email then in that case. And,
yes.
And my last question is, can you talk about, I know you guys have done major investments in solar energy and efficient buses. Can you talk more about that?
Sure. Yeah, that's, we are an industry leader in that. We're the first to adopt hybrid electric 60-foot buses. We also have one of the largest trolley networks, which is all electric. But we are also looking at things like battery-powered buses, so we can provide service in areas that maybe don't make sense for big investments in trolley wire, to provide it through battery-powered buses. It's an emerging technology, but I think just this week we were awarded a federal low and no emission vehicle grant to start really ramping up our battery bus fleet and it was, I think, for the purchase of chargers and also additional vehicles. So, other larger agencies, we're all kind of facing the same challenges, but we are definitely pushing on that.
I think we've got Councilmember Honda for a quick clarification.
It's a Kiwanis Club, the Action Club, and they're their own club, it's a group of adults who are developmentally disabled, and they do all rely on transit. So they meet at the community center here every fourth Tuesday in the evening, and they do take transit, but even those who have jobs or rely on transit, and they've had a difficult time getting services. So.
Yeah, we'd definitely be happy to connect with.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Honda. Councilmember Acevedo.
Thank you. And also, thank you for the presentation. And I used to use the Take Metro a lot, and I've seen a lot of changes in your fleet. And the kneeling buses or whatever have been very useful to people with disability, because I am one. And so I do appreciate those. I do like Rapid A. However, when 194 was replaced by this one, a lot of the stops were taken, and one was right by where I lived. So it made the distance so much bigger that I am not in a position to take the bus. And so I don't know what your plan would be for, again, goes back to people with disability, because I stopped using it when that happened. And so that would be just a comment I wanted to make. And you did talk about cashless Orca cards, and I know when you transfer from Metro to Sound Transit, the fee difference usually, I don't think you take transfers anymore, or do you? I don't know. But with the fees, I know they're different. So is that going to change? Are they all going to be the same rate between Metro and Sound Transit, with the buses, or not?
So that's a very timely question, because there's a lot of talk about fares and what Orca 2, that's kind of what we're calling it right now, what that looks like. So that's, we're still all trying to work that out. But I know the intent on both agencies is making a consistent system that's easy to use, and that seems like, definitely something that would be considered as part of that Orca 2 process.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question would be around human services and the Orca cards that are given out to low-income families. So is that going to continue, or do you know?
That I would have to get back to you on.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what time is the Todd Beamer open house?
I believe.
Do you know?
5:30.
5:30? Okay, thank you.
Council,
you.
any other questions? Okay, we've got it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You guys do a great job. Actually, my microphone was not on. Thank you very much. Okay, now we're going to move into our study session in regard to Sound Transit. We have Chelsea Levy, Government and Community Affairs Relations Officer, and Eric Chips, Senior Transportation Planner. Good to see you, Chelsea.
Nice to see you. Thanks for having us. Thanks for having this topic on your agenda today.
Of course.
It's important. Well, hi. Again, thanks for having us. I'm Chelsea Levy with Sound Transit Government and Community Relations, and I have with me Eric Chips. He's a senior planner at Sound Transit who specializes in South King County in particular. So in partnership with Metro, we wanted to come and talk to you about transit that both agencies are obviously doing to plan for how folks get around our region in the long run. I wanted to start off tonight by just providing a little bit of context about Sound Transit for your vast listening audience, but also to talk a little bit about Sound Transit 2 projects, just to give you a quick update. And then Eric will come up and talk about Sound Transit 3 projects specifically. So you may have seen this slide in the past. I've been before you a number of times as we've been working through this process to put a draft ST3 plan before voters. So this is Sound Transit's district. It's a large district. It essentially encompasses the urban areas of Pierce, King, and Snohomish counties. There's 1,080 square miles in this district. There's 52 jurisdictions that we work with and the communities within them. Between Everett and DuPont and out east past Sammamish. There's a lot of people who have access to our regional transit services. About 3 million people, in fact, or just about 40% of the state's population live within this district and have the opportunity to benefit from our ST Express bus network. And we obviously work very closely with King County Metro and the other transit agencies, Pierce Transit and Community Transit. They operate our express bus fleet for us, and we plan our routes in sync in a very integrated way with them. We also have light rail. Today we operate Tacoma Link Light Rail in downtown Tacoma, but you all are probably more familiar with the Central Link Light Rail system that operates today between downtown Seattle and the airport, and now out to the University of Washington, and I will speak to that in just a minute. And then we also have the Sounder commuter line. So Sounder South operates during the peak periods. In particular, we also have a Sounder North line, but Sounder South operates between Lakewood and downtown Seattle with stops in South Tacoma, Tacoma, Puyallup, Sumner, Kent, Auburn, Kent, Tukwila, and down into downtown Seattle. It's incredibly popular, and the ridership on it is growing. We carry about 15,000 riders on Sounder South today. This is a 15% increase, and we're anticipating continued growth in Sounder South and in all of our lines of business as the region grows. So we opened University Link a couple weeks ago, and this is a great success story, and we're anticipating this sort of success story to be continued as we continue to open additional Sound Transit 2 approved light rail lines. So the extension to the University of Washington from downtown gives riders an 8-minute connection between downtown and Husky Stadium. It also includes a stop on Capitol Hill. This project came in $200 million under budget, and we were able to deliver it 6 months ahead of schedule. But I think what's particularly exciting about this line is the sort of ridership response we've seen. So we typically operate our train is made up of 2 vehicles, 2 cars. Well, within a week of opening this service, there was so much demand for it that we had to add an additional car to make a 3-car train. And this service, we kind of anticipated the ridership to drop off after an initial push, but it has remained constant at a very high level. We carry over 50,000 riders a day just on that extension. And I really believe that this is a trend as we continue to open up lines in the region. Speaking of that, we are constructing light rail down to Angle Lake Station at South 200th, and we'll be looking forward to celebrating the opening of the station with you this fall. In addition to the light rail station and guideway, this project includes a public plaza as well as a 1,050 stall parking facility, which will certainly, we hope, will address some of the parking challenges that we are all throughout the region facing with the light rail line. You're very familiar with this project, the Federal Way Link Extension. This is how we are planning to get light rail down to downtown Federal Way. Cahill sends his regards. He's presented to you many times in the past. This project, as you're familiar with, it proposes stations at Kent Des Moines in the vicinity of Highline College, at 272nd, and in downtown Federal Way. Since Cahill was last here presenting to you, the board has selected an I-5 alignment. Thank you for your participation in that decision. We've also been hosting kind of stakeholder-focused workshops to do some additional station area planning, and your staff and others have been involved in that. We're working towards getting a record of decision from the federal government on this project by the end of the year, and with that, we will be then able to go into preliminary engineering. So this project, you're aware, is funded for construction to Kent Des Moines, and it will require ST3 or another funding source to continue to be able to construct to 272nd and into downtown Federal Way, and ultimately into downtown Tacoma. We're also, as part of the ST2 plan, delivering access improvements to the Sounder stations. So we know parking and access at the Sounder stations is constrained up and down the line. We have active projects at Puyallup and Sumner that will add parking at those stations. And this year we are kicking off project development for increased parking, pedestrian and bicycle improvements to the Kent and Auburn stations as well. those are particularly important projects, not only because the region is growing and there's growth at these stations, but we're also bringing new Sounder service online. So later this year, we'll be adding a midday trip and then round trip, and then in 2017, there will be 2 additional round trips added to the Sounder service. So this is a chart you may have seen before. This is ridership growth over time, and Sound Transit's ridership is largely a function of regional growth as well as when we bring major projects online. So the yellow dots that you see here represent jumps in ridership with new light rail segments coming online. This year we opened to the University of Washington and later to Angle Lake, as I spoke of. In 2021, we'll open up to Northgate, and then 2023 is the end of the ST2 Capital program, and by then we'll have light rail to Bellevue, to Linwood, and then to Kent Des Moines for the beginning of Federal Way Link extension. So it's been alluded to a number of times by myself and the folks from Metro. Our region is growing. The Puget Sound Regional Council anticipates 1 million new people in this region by 2040. That's why all of the transit agencies in the region are planning for new investments and growth, because I got stuck in traffic getting here this evening. And I'm sure that as we leave here, many of us will get stuck in traffic again, headed home and in the morning. You know, there are a lot of people who want to move around our region today, but with 1 million new people, that's a lot more people that will want to move around our region to access jobs, to access community activities, and expect a very high quality of life. That's why we all live here. And so our board of directors, the Sound Transit Board, is overseen by an 18-member board of directors who are elected officials from throughout the region, as well as the Secretary of Transportation. When the Puget Sound Regional Council came out with this statistic of 1 million new residents by 2040, our board immediately started thinking about what regional transit's role is in moving all of those people around the region, and also what the role is of the local transit agencies as well. Dow Constantine, the King County executive, happens to chair. He is obviously the head of Metro, but he is also the chair of Sound Transit, and that's in large part why we are seeing so much integration between our local transit agencies and Sound Transit at this juncture as we're all planning for this regional growth. So our board began thinking about what regional transit's role is in moving folks around the region in the future. They immediately updated the long-range plan back in 2014. Much like Metro's long-range plan that we were talking about tonight, it's a financially unconstrained vision for regional transit in the future. In the 2015 legislative session, the legislature authorized 3 new types of revenue sources to fund a future ballot measure, the ST3 plan. And then we began system planning soon after that in 2015 and through 2016. System plan it's kind of Sound Transit speak for the development of the ST3 ballot measure. So with that, I'm going to ask Eric to come up here and join us and talk to you more specifically about what's proposed in the ST3 plan and specifically what's being proposed for South King County.
And before that, can I just ask one question?
Yes.
Because you talk about planning for, what was the growth number?
1 million new people by 2040.
Okay, new people. Do you ever talk about or look at how many people might not be here that were counted before? Just wondering.
How many people would be leaving?
Well, yeah, how many people would leave in that same period of time?
You know, I don't know offhand. We get our projections from the Puget Sound Regional Council, and I haven't heard that there's anticipated to be a loss of population. It's really about growth.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Yeah, I know it's about growth, but growth grows. You can say 40 million people, new people, or 4 million new people, but if 2 million move out, your net is only 2 million. It's just something that
Yes.
Maybe people ought to start to look at, and so we're really talking real numbers here.
Sure.
Thank you.
Eric, all right.
Is this? Okay. Thanks for having me here tonight. So the graphic up here, the map on the left, is the draft plan. And this is the graphic that we use to describe all the projects that have been discussed over the last 2 years. You've been involved, the city has been involved in and the development of a candidate project list with a lot more projects than actually appear on this draft plan. But from that candidate project list, our board selected the projects that they felt were most beneficial to the region and was affordable within the plan, and we'll talk a little bit more about that towards the end of the presentation. But I'm here to talk about what the plan includes. And so in the first, this is the overall view, and then we'll talk a little bit more specifically about down here in South King County. Light rail, we're talking about a 112-mile regional system by the time the ST3 plan would be implemented. Right now we have about 58 miles that would be completed through the ST2 program. ST3 would roughly double that. That would add also 35 new stations. It would be a system that connects Tacoma all the way to Everett and out to Redmond on the east side, and also some couple of branch lines within the city of Seattle out to Ballard and West Seattle. So that would be the light rail system. And then there's also an extension of Tacoma Link. That system is being extended already through ST2, and in ST3 it would further extend out to Tacoma Community College. We're also looking at Sounder expansion of capacity, and that could take the form of longer trains with more seats or service, adding more service beyond what we are adding in ST2. That involves negotiations with the owner of the rail line, that's Burlington Northern Santa Fe, and that's always an interesting discussion, but they're a willing partner, and we're hopeful that that could be fruitful, that we could add more service in the future. It also looks at improvements to the system that we have on Sounder, and that would be more improvements to access. You heard from King County Metro and their long-range plan and how we're talking about integrating all these systems. Regional transit really couldn't exist without our partner agencies, without Metro providing a lot of the big portion of the trips that ride our connections to our trips. So we need also improvements for parking, but people who want to not necessarily use buses, bikes, pedestrians. So we have a program for improving access to all our existing and future stations along Sounder. We're also looking at bus service expansion, or at least improvements along certain corridors where bus service is already operated in the form of bus rapid transit. BRT is the acronym for that. In the case of 405, we're looking at a BRT system all the way from Linwood down through Bellevue, Renton, and on over to Burien. That would be taking advantage of the system that WashDOT is going to be putting in place for more HOV carpool lanes and hot lanes. So the buses would not necessarily be stuck in all the traffic that single occupant vehicles are stuck in. And there would be facilities along the way that would help facilitate connections to the BRT system. And then last, I already mentioned the access to transit. So let's move down a little bit more specifically here to South King County. As mentioned, we're talking about included in ST3 draft plan, light rail from Des Moines, continuing extension of light rail from Kent Des Moines area to Federal Way, and then further from Federal Way all the way into Tacoma Dome Station. And that could probably conclude my presentation for you for purposes now, but I'll continue on. The capital improvements we talked about for Sounder, capacity expansions. Bus on shoulder, what that really envisions is, we know this is a big plan, it's ambitious, and it's a long-term plan. It takes a long time to build light rail. So there's improvements that we're envisioning that we could be making for current users that would take less time to implement and cost relatively less. And one of the ideas for doing that is to have buses that operate on shoulders on the freeway system and take advantage of some existing infrastructure. It would have to be improved in some cases, and we'd work with WashDOT to make sure that can be done safely and efficiently. But we're going to take a look at the improvements on those various corridors. I mentioned access improvements and BRT. And then also, on our existing system, there are some places where the rail goes by that people are looking at adding stations for access, and one of those is the case of Boeing Access at the south end of Boeing Field there, another station along the existing link system. Wrong way. Nope, right way. There we go. Not only is there a capital and a service program in the ST3 plan, but there's also some programs and some studies to look beyond ST3. We have a system access program We had this in ST2, and that's looking at not just the new facilities, but the existing facilities to make improvements where they're needed, because as our system grows and we get more users, we need to make enhancements to the things that we've already built, as well as the additional ones, and look at more parking in some cases and pedestrian and bicycle access. So that's what the system access program would do, would be continuing on an idea that we had in ST2 but got defunded because of the recession. We have a relatively new transit-oriented development policy, and we would develop a program to implement that policy, and that's where we take a look at, we acquire a fair amount of properties in the course of building these facilities, light rail, and we don't always need all those properties once we're done. We end up with surplus properties, so we want to take a look at what's the best use for those properties after we're done with them, and we want to encourage transit-oriented development around our facilities to get the riders that we need, and we also want to work with the jurisdictions in our transit-oriented development program and put money towards helping planning that and helping those jurisdictions realize their land use goals around stations as well. So that's what the TOD program is for. Innovation and technology, that's just basically to stay ahead of the curve. There's a lot of things changing in the transportation industry. We've got Uber and Lyft, and we've got smartphones that can tell you where the buses are and the trains, and we've also got possibly driverless cars coming in the future that could be used for accessing transit. So we want to have a program to stay ahead of that. And then the studies, we did this for ST2, and that actually was part of the reason we looked at early on going all the way to Tacoma. We want to take a look at corridors that we're not necessarily building in, but we have future interests in for our long-range plan. So you can see a list of other studies here for potential future improvements in something beyond an ST3 program. So that's what that's about. You want me to go ahead and offer the timeline? Okay. So this timeline describes the process that got us to where we're at right now, which is where the STAR is, going through the candidate projects and now putting together the draft system plan for the board. We're entering the public input phase of that. So this whole month we're going to be out, as Metro staff has mentioned to you, talking to the public. We've got open houses. We've got one down here coming up next week at Todd High School. And we're looking for comments for everybody on this draft plan, including the City of Federal Way. We'll take any and all, and we really look forward to hearing your ideas about what's good, what's missing, what you don't like necessarily. That's what this whole process is about. But there is a definite drop-dead date to get this on the ballot, which is the board by this November, which is the board's intent. We have to be done with this by the end of June this year, because that way then we can transmit the plan to the counties, and they would then vote to put it on their ballots in each county. And so that's the timeline for this. So by the end of April, we'll hopefully have rounded up a lot of the input that we're going to be doing, and through the month of May, our board will take all that input and decide on a final plan, and then talk about it over June and put it, and then adopt it. And then I'm going to let Chelsea finish up with the funding part. Thank you.
So this is an ambitious capital program. It's a 25-year plan. It's a $50 billion plan made up of the funding for it is a combination of the taxing sources that you see here, as well as other revenues, which encompass fare box, money that people pay to ride our system, as well as grants. We've been very successful receiving federal grants in particular. We have a couple full funding grant agreements with the federal government, in particular for the Linwood Link extension. We're anticipating additional grants in ST3 because our projects have such great ridership. We are able to receive those funds. So here is, we're in a public comment period, as Eric said. Now is the time to talk to Sound Transit about this package. This comment period runs through the end of the month, April 29th. These are meetings you can attend. The ones with asterisks next to them are meetings that are occurring in partnership with Metro on their long-range plan. The one in Federal Way, it's the same one that they were speaking about at 5:30 on April 29th at Todd High School. But if you can't attend a meeting, we still want to hear from you. Sound Transit 3 is a great resource online. It's soundtransit3, the letter number 3.org. It has all of this information and more. as well as you can go online and take a survey, and the survey will be used by it's really a survey that asks you for your opinions on the plan in general. And it's important that South King County is represented in that survey, so I would really encourage all of you and your constituents to go online and make sure South King County is represented in those responses, and Federal Way in particular. And what we're doing is working towards a November ballot measure, so there's lots more to come on this. And with that, we are happy to take questions.
Council? Councilmember Honda.
Thanks. Thank you for being here tonight and talking with us. What happens if this does make it to the ballot in November, if the voters turn it down? Is there a plan that the board, Sound Transit Board, has to, in case that happens?
No, not yet.
Not
no,
yet?
No,
Okay.
there is no plan for if it fails.
Because we need this, if we want light rail and Federal Way,
Yes,
we need this to pass.
we do.
So, all right, thank you.
And do you have numbers in regard to the per household, the estimated per household cost?
It's, do you have those numbers? For an individual, it's approximately $17 a month or $200 annually, and I can provide you with a per household cost. I don't have that one.
It's somewhere around $35 per month.
So, and $35 per month for, are we talking, I mean, we're hearing, you know, the thing about it, we're hearing vastly different numbers in regard to impacts on single-family households.
These are the numbers. So this is for an individual, $200 a year, $17 a month. I'll have to provide you with the household numbers. I think that we're going with these individual numbers because there are different numbers for households out there, and it's confusing. So.
Do you know what the rate is per thousand? Is it like 50? My understanding is 50 cents per thousand, or do you know what people can calculate? It's very important for people to be able to calculate
It is.
what the financial impact to them would be, and I think that's going to be the major issue, I think, with this moving forward.
Yeah. So all of those details are available on the website, soundtransit3.org. I'm sorry I don't have them with me tonight, but I can provide them to you.
Okay.
You're absolutely right.
All right. Thank you. Council, any other, Councilmember Assefa Dawson?
So the project is funded to Kent Des Moines Road, correct?
Correct.
So when does that start? That phase?
It will be completed by 2023. We will receive our environmental documentation at the end of this year, and it's 2 to 3 years for preliminary engineering and final design. I don't know that I can give you a construction start date. Cahill would definitely.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Burbidge.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm very excited about this, all the planning that's going on and the opportunity we can look forward to. But I'm curious about the funding and relating it to the vote. The vote already happened, bringing Link Light Rail to 272nd, and I know it's because of the decline in the economy that there isn't funding to that distance. Assuming that the economy continues to improve, is it possible that there would be additional funding available, bringing it farther south, even, you know, so making it more feasible?
So what happened during the recession is that there was about 30% of the revenue that we anticipated during the Sound Transit 2 timeline was never collected by the agency, right? And so it is possible that I think if ST3 didn't pass and voters never approved another ballot measure, eventually there would be enough revenue to build to 272nd, the southernmost point that voters have approved. It just wouldn't be able to happen within the ST2 timeframe of 2023.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Council, any other questions? All right, thank you so much. Great presentation. Look forward to seeing those numbers,
Yes.
and that way we can make sure that we get those numbers out. Actually, I was just in an editorial board meeting right before I came here
Okay.
with our local paper, and they were that question came up.
Oh, great. Well, let me get you some information on that.
Very
Great.
good. Thank you very
Thanks
much.
a lot.
Okay. Okay, Council, great work. We've got about 15 minutes, 14 minutes before our meeting starts. So Great job on these 2 study sessions. We're in recess until the beginning of our 7 p.m. meeting.
So, edit.